What are the words that come to mind when you hear the name Jephthah? Probably something like rash, or murderer, or cruel, or even fool. That's probably because you think that he made a rash vow when he promised the Lord that he would offer up as a burnt sacrifice the first thing that met him when he came home from battle. And probably because you think that he fulfilled that vow by offering up his daughter as a burnt sacrifice. Well, that's what I used to think too, until I studied the passage. I was studying it with a view to preaching a sermon on it. And the more I studied the passage and prayed over it, the more I realised I totally missed the point. Jephthah's not a beacon of warning, but a hero of faith. He didn't sin when he made that vow, but rather it was a holy and well thought out vow. And he didn't sinfully fulfill that vow, but he performed it in a holy and righteous manner consistent with how he intended it. And that did not involve the offering up of his daughter as a burnt sacrifice. You can watch or listen to the sermon that will give you a fuller treatment of this if you click on the link at the end of this short video. But let me just give you a couple of hints as to what changed my mind and what I hope will change yours. First of all, there's Jephthah's previous character. He's portrayed right at the beginning of chapter 11 as a mighty man of valour, a hero who had gathered around himself a group of men, and though he was an outcast from Israel, he was fighting battles for Israel, little skirmishes on the outskirts, on Israel's borders. That's really what attracted the elders of Israel to come to him later and ask him to help them as they faced an even greater battle and an even greater enemy. Also, as you read Judges 11, especially as you look at how Jephthah interacts with the king of Ammon, you realise he's a man that had a great knowledge of Scripture, a great knowledge of Israel's history. And as a man who knew Scripture, he would know human sacrifice was completely forbidden. Also, you notice that just before he makes the vow in verse 30, in verse 29 we're told the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. So you've got the Spirit of the Lord, and then he makes a vow. He makes the vow filled with the Spirit. Would a Spirit-filled man make a sinful vow, a rash vow? Also, if you look at the actual vow, there's unfortunate translation of that vow in a lot of the versions that we use in the English language. He says, the first thing that meets me when I come home in peace from the children of Ammon shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. That word "and" can legitimately be translated "or." It's the same word in the Hebrew. It can mean "and" or. Notice the difference when you translate it "or," and that's in the marginal reading of the authorized version. The first thing I meet when I come home shall surely be the Lord's, or I will offer it up for a burnt offering. You see what he's saying? He's saying basically, if it's a person, I will give it to the Lord in consecration. If it's an animal, I will offer it to the Lord as a burnt sacrifice. Then you think, for example, the woman at the tabernacle door. We read of them in Exodus 38 and in 1 Samuel. There was an order of women who specialised in dedicating themselves to the service of the Lord, and that's what I believe happened to Jephthah's daughter. She was consecrated to the Lord's service. She joined that group of women who dedicated themselves to cleaning and cooking and washing and repairing at the door of the tabernacle. Notice also the emphasis in Scripture in verses 37, 38 and 39 of Judges 11. It's not that she lost her life Rather, 3 times what's emphasised is she lost the opportunity to have children and to marry. So, what's being highlighted is not that she became lifeless, but childless and husbandless. There's another unfortunate translation at the end of the chapter where it talks about the daughters of Israel joining the daughter of Jephthah to lament 4 days every year. That word lament, the Hebrew word, is actually the word for rehearse. It's not translated lament anywhere else. The word means to commemorate, to rehearse events by way of commemoration. So what the daughters of Israel are doing here is every year they're going to the tabernacle and they're joining with Jephthah's daughter to rehearse the remarkable sacrifice she made, giving up her life to the service of the Lord. This was something that was to be remembered in Israel. Also, Jephthah wasn't punished. You'd think if anyone did this, they would be punished for what they did, but no. Rather, he was judged for another 6 years. And he's not condemned in Scripture. In fact, he's mentioned in 2 other places, 1 Samuel, Hebrews 11, both times as a hero of faith. What then was Jephthah's sorrow? Why was he so sad when he realised this was what he had to do? Well, it wasn't that he had to offer his daughter up as a burnt sacrifice, but rather the Lord was asking of him the most costly possibility he had in mind when he first made the vow, which was the giving of his daughter to the Lord's service so that she would have no children and he would have no descendants. Also, there were 2 months before the actual giving of the daughter. You'd think, surely, within 2 months, if this was wrong, Jephthah would have repented of it. Others would have come and counselled him and pointed out to him that, for example, in Leviticus 5, there is provision for repenting from rash vows. Also in Leviticus 27, if somebody has been vowed to the Lord, they can be bought back. So, for all these reasons, and others if you listen to the sermon, I think we've got to really work at recovering the tarnished reputation of Jephthah. He was a man of great personal integrity, a man of God, a hero of faith.